Back here on HQ Spotlight tomorrow night in the main event of UFC 313, the light heavyweight title is on the line. Arguably one of the biggest names in the sport right now, and Alex Pereira will look to defend his title against arguably his toughest challenger in Dagestan's Magomed Ankalaev. Pereira is 5-0 since moving up to the lightweight heavyweight and will be making his fourth title defense. It is all going down tomorrow night at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. Let's welcome in Shakiel Mahjouri here to preview it. And honestly, it is not very often that we see Pereira as an underdog, Shaq. But when this opened up the lines, that is what happened. Now things have evened out a little bit more. Ankalaev opened up on FanDuel there. Those lines have settled down. But the tough test remains. What makes him such a dangerous challenger in this main event?
You know, Alex, in many people's estimations, was the 2024 MMA Fighter of the Year. I know he was our runner-up, neck and neck with Ilia Topuria, and that's based on how active he was as a champion and his ability to finish Jiří Procházka, Jamal Hill, Khalil Roundtree Jr. But what these three fighters all had in common is that they were all almost exclusively strikers, taking on an Alex, arguably the best striker that the UFC has ever seen. This guy is a two-division UFC champion, a two-division Glory Kickboxing champion, the only one to have those accolades to his name. Against Ankalaev, he's facing a far more well-rounded fighter, a guy that can strike, a guy that can grapple, and so that is a test that he has not seen, Alex, since his debut at light heavyweight against Jan Blachowicz, and that was a very narrow fight. It was a split decision win. So what really people are banking on here is that Ankalaev is a great grappler and that Pereira simply hasn't shored up that part of his game enough, coming from a primarily kickboxing background.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of that, Ankalaev kind of turned a lot of heads when he said that he's going to stand and strike with Pereira. Is that a smart strategy, or is there a better key to a victory for him, in your opinion?
So I have no doubt in my mind that Ankalaev is the most well-rounded guy that Alex is facing in the 205-pound division. I feel like his wrestling credentials are a little overstated. I don't know if that's because he's Dagestani and people are sort of conflating it with like Islam and Habib. But Ankalaev in the UFC averages less than one takedown every 15 minutes, 31% success rate on those attempts. Those aren't very high stats. So he is primarily a guy who actually fights at range, lands more than he gets hit. He tends to stay safe for the most part. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see him exchange with Alex for long durations, but he's going to be very mindful about keeping the space somewhere that he feels safe and mixing in those takedowns, even if they're not successful, at least as a way to sort of overload the champ and get him thinking about different things. And that's where he'll probably find the most success.
Shaq, really quickly, before we move on, who wins?
Man, I'm going to go with Alex. He's had a long time to work on the grappling. I don't know. We haven't been able to see the fruits of that labor because he's been fighting a lot of strikers, but I think he is the most potent offensive striker in the UFC. He's had a lot of time working with Glover Teixeira, former champ, who's an amazing grappler in his own right. Something just tells me he gets this done, but it's possible he gets out there and he's sort of muted. So could go either way. I'm going to go with the champ.
All right, so a lot of fans were disappointed when Dan Hooker pulled out of that co-main event of this card, which had the makings to be an instant classic. Rafael Fiziev stepping in for a fight of the night rematch. How challenging is it going to be for Justin Gaethje to adjust on such short notice there?
I'm not so worried about Gaethje's ability to adjust in the sense that he was coming in with the same game plan either way. Justin Gaethje, in my opinion, based on how you want to sort of view the stats, is the most exciting, the most violent fighter in UFC history. He has 13 post-fight bonuses, whether that's knockout of the night, fight of the night, or performance of the night, in 13 fights. So one bonus per average on fight. That is unheard of. He's the first fighter to get 7 consecutive post-fight bonuses. He once got 2 in one night. This guy is a marauder, and that is the game plan he's coming in with. He told me last week that he thinks he's been fighting too safely lately, which is absurd when you think about his Michael Chandler fight being CBS Sports 2023, I think, fight of the year, or 2022, something like that. Gaethje is going to come in. He's going to march down a guy who's going to strike with him. That was the game plan against Hooker. It's going to be the game plan there. What I'm most worried about is actually Fiziev. He hasn't fought in about 18 months. He lost to Gaethje by majority decision. Then he suffered a knee injury against Mateusz Gamrot. So in the first fight, Fiziev sort of waned as the fight proceeded. He was landing on Gaethje a lot early, but his stamina sort of started to tank as Gaethje kept that pressure going. Gaethje's prepared to do that again. Fiziev has the same challenge to face, but he's doing it on 10 days' notice, having not fought in a year and a half.
If we look ahead, Pereira said he's not looking too far ahead after this fight, but then went off to list off 3 blockbuster super fights that are potentially on his radar. The middleweight champ Dricus du Plessis, heavyweight champ Jon Jones, boxing champ Alexander Usyk, Which out of those 3 are most likely in your opinion?
I would say probably a fight at heavyweight. I don't know if it will be Jon Jones. Interim champion Tom Aspinall has made it abundantly clear that the UFC is working on booking Jones versus Aspinall to unify the heavyweight titles. Aspinall claims Jones is sort of holding up the negotiation ends. Even Dana White said that is the fight that they want to make. If I had to guess, unless Pereira fights the winner of Jan Blachowicz versus Carlos Ulberg, which would be, in terms of light heavyweight rankings, the most important fight for the division, but not one that really excites casual fans or sort of generates much public interest. I think Alex goes to heavyweight. He's active enough to fight in 2 weight classes, but it's either going to be Tom Aspinall, if things don't work out with Jon Jones, for an vacant undisputed title. Aspinall would graduate from interim to undisputed because Jones would vacate the title. Then you get Aspinall versus Pereira. He might fight Jon Jones in a non-title fight if Jones decides he doesn't want Aspinall and vacates the belt. Or we might see Pereira versus someone like Cyril Gane in a title eliminator. I think he's going to heavyweight. I just don't know how it plays out. Maybe they have him serve as a backup for Aspinall versus Jones. There's just too many moving parts right now.
All right, if we look at boxing and UFC, a new boxing league was just announced under TKO, which is going to overhaul the current system. So what does it mean for the future of boxing, and is that good for the sport?
Good for the sport is a complicated question. I think what we're going to see is boxing begin to trend in the direction of the UFC model, especially, and this is by no means a guarantee, but if the Ali Act is overturned in boxing, it's why the models in boxing and UFC are so different. UFC contracts are generally quite more heavily weighted against the fighters. They're more restrictive. The Ali Act offers protections in boxing that MMA fighters don't receive. If that gets repealed, all bets are off. You're going to see an identical model almost between the UFC and this new league that Dana and TKO and Turkey are working on. What is almost a certainty is that Turki Al-Sheikh has incredible leverage and capital to make the fights he wants to make happen. He is responsible for getting us the 2 Fury Usyk fights, the Bivol Beterbiev fights. Money talks, and Turkey has a lot of it to spend. The UFC has a very successful business model they've implemented on their side. And I think we're going to see that slowly start to trend, especially as these more traditional boxing promotions start losing their financial leverage to keep fighters, to curry favors with fighters. I think in terms of the biggest blockbusters we could see coming up, and this is not a guarantee, but Canelo is working currently with Turki Al-Sheikh. There are rumors, or at least speculation, that we might get Canelo Alvarez versus Terence Bud Crawford in September. If that does happen, I'm almost certain it's going to happen under this new banner of TKO Boxing, whatever they're going to call it, at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas.
Shaq, we certainly appreciate it, talking about boxing, UFC, and then, of course, more specifically, UFC 313, which is on Saturday out of Vegas. Of course, those upcoming main events. We just talked about UFC 313 with Pereira and Ankalaev, and then UFC 314 heading to Miami on April 12th.
Oh, UFC 313 in Vegas on Saturday night, headlined by Alex Pereira clashing with Magomed Ankalaev. Pereira putting his UFC light heavyweight championship on the line, making the fourth defense of his title. Pereira has won each of his last 4 fights via knockout, just destroying people. Ankalaev, though, on a 13-fight unbeaten streak. Co-main event, it's Justin Gaethje against Rafael Fiziev. Fiziev will be fighting on 10 days' notice. Dan Hooker was Gaethje's original opponent, but withdrew because of a hand injury. Fiziev fighting for the first time in nearly 18 months. Gaethje and Fiziev previously met in 2023, with Gaethje winning via majority decision. Welcome in Sportsline MMA analyst Danny Vithlani here to deliver his best bets for UFC 313. Starting with the main event, Pereira opened as the dog. Now he's a slight favorite. Magomed Ankalaev presents a major challenge with his wrestling, Danny. It's a short price to back the champ. What's your approach in this championship fight?
The market is a bit curious, Hakeem, and I keep going back to that Jamal Hill fight where Pereira was priced very similarly at that -120 range, right? Both Yuri Prochazka fights, we were given the gift of betting Alex Pereira, knocking the same opponent out at this price tag. And yet again, the market is offering a pick'em for a dominant champion. Hakeem, I'm forced to take this side. I have to go with Alex Pereira to make his 4th consecutive title defense, simply because we've yet to see Magomed Ankalaev consistently go to that wrestling. A lot of people are talking about that as the wrinkle to his game that will challenge Pereira. But I haven't seen him dominate UFC opponents with it quite yet. Pereira also now training one camp at the Fighting Nerds, hottest gym in MMA right now. And a camp with them to work that grappling can only help. We remember him staving off that attack from Jan Blachowicz 4 fights ago to eke out that split decision win. His MMA game has only improved. And Hakeem, I'm looking at that last fight with Ankalaev, backing Alexander Rakic up the entire fight, hitting him with that straight left cross that he's so known for, and not implementing that wrestling at all. And I'm wondering, I don't think he's going to be able to back Pereira up. I'm wondering what it looks like if he's the fighter made to fight on his back foot, if he's the fighter made to stand and trade with Alex Poatan Pereira. One left hook is all it takes. Those low kicks he's been susceptible to against Rakic, against Blachowicz. I think Pereira can use his best weapon, those calf kicks, to shut him down and then land a big shot. I think the market is wrong again. I'm not making the mistake of ever betting against Alex Pereira until otherwise notified.
Yeah, I might be on cold takes exposed here in 48 hours, but I'm sitting here thinking, okay, right? You have to be on the mat to wrestle. What if he never gets down to the mat? What if Pereira never gets to the mat? What if his punching power is so elite in this fight that there's no chance to have ground and pound?
And that's what I'm thinking, too. Perhaps odds makers are also looking at the Khalil Roundtree fight and feeling, well, not just the wrestling defense has a concern, but maybe Pereira is a little more hittable than we thought. I think that's unfair. He was sick going into that last fight. He's letting out those deep bronchial coughs in the corner, and he was taking antibiotics. So his cardio was compromised, his health was compromised. And just because Roundtree was able to hit him with some good shots, I don't think that goes to show that he's going to get knocked out. It showed that his chin holds up at 205. He's no longer the guy who can get cold slept at middleweight by Israel Adesanya. And he rolls and parries and checks a lot of shots. Just because he gets hit doesn't mean he's getting hit clean. I think his defense is underrated, and I don't know that Ankalaev can wrestle him for 3 out of the 5 rounds, Hakeem. So I'm with you. We're taking the price tag here all day on Pereira.
He's the scariest fighter on the roster. I'm not sure, like -115. Okay, let's go. Again,
if
he's
we're on freezing cold takes in the morning, then so be it, Hakeem. I'll be there with you.
Yeah, it's just, you know what, I'll take it on my chin if that's what, if Ankalaev pulls off a stunner, more power, more respect to him. Co-main event, it's Justin Gaethje against Rafael Fiziev. Fiziev fighting for the first time in nearly 18 months. Gaethje and Fiziev previously met in 2023. Gaethje winning by majority decision. Gaethje says he has a new approach, which is really an old approach. He wants to be more aggressive like he once was. He's the underdog in this fight, Danny. Is Gaethje a very much a live dog in this fight?
I think absolutely. Obviously, he won their first meeting, and the market is down on him after getting devastatingly knocked out by Max Holloway. You think of Justin Gaethje, you're going to remember that lasting image of him face down on the canvas, bloodied, and you're wondering where his durability is now. But consider this. Before that devastating shot in the 5th round, Gaethje ducked into a spinning body kick that hit him right in the face and fought 5 rounds tough against Max Holloway with a broken nose. I mean, we're going to remember that last 10 seconds of the wild exchange, but Gaethje's toughness, I think it could still very well be there. He took the 10 months off. He was preparing a full camp for war with Dan the Hangman Hooker. You're going to take that fight? You better be ready for war. So I'm going to go ahead and believe that he can take Fiziev. He took some of Fiziev's best shot in the 1st round that last fight and then implemented that low kick, slowed him down, and you see the damage he was wearing from that jab and those vicious Gaethje uppercuts. If he can last through that 1st round, I think the experience shows, and Gaethje wins 2 and 3, wins another decision.
Yeah, he is very much a live dog, +138, 3 and 3 in his past 6 fights after starting 22 and 2 in his career, coming off that 5th round TKO to Max Holloway last year, looking to bounce back. All right, now let's get your best bet for the rest of the card. What do you have for us, Danny?
Yeah, anything better than -200. I think there's a lot of value on Joshua Van money line. I grabbed him at -172 here, and I think the kid is a stud and one to watch out for in the flyweight division. He's got 80% takedown defense, and he's taking on a young undefeated 10-0 grappler in Ray Tsuruya. But if Tsuruya can't take him to the floor, I think he's going to be in trouble on the feet. Van has faced relentless grapplers like Edgar Chairez, Cody Durden, some really tough UFC opponents already, and he's only 23 years old. He's a physical striker. He's got thudding low kicks, and I think he could put serious damage on Tsuruya if this fight takes place on the feet. Look for him for the knockout at +225 as well, but anything better than $2 on the price tag on the money line, you got to bet Josh Van.
Danny Vithlani putting knowledge in your mind so you can put money in your pocket. UFC 313 Saturday night from Vegas. We'll have post-fight analysis here on HQ. Danny, thanks. And you can find Danny's picks and breakdown of the entire card on sportsline.com. Not a Sportsline member? That's all right. Sign up using the promo code WINNERS to get 60% off the annual price. Just head to sportsline.com/join or scan the QR code and win with Sportsline.